Most of the things I'm going to be talking about today, we don't do with the intent to cause harm to our musicians. Because personally, I operate under the philosophy that the vast majority of humanity is just trying to do the best that we can with what we have. I hope that this serves as a warning to you, yes, but also as a message of comfort to you that it's not all on your shoulders to be the only one to help this person through this injury. Rely on your growing professional network and your musician will feel so supported, which from a psychological standpoint is critical to their recovery. But allow me to apply to your humanity once again by saying that these are people, not products. The music is the product, obviously. But if you aren't treating the musicians the way that they need to be treated, then the product suffers. You are merely a guide on the side, like I said in the last episode. The moment you start exercising dominion over the musician in any way that impedes their recovery, you have crossed a line. Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I am so excited to share today's content with you because today is part 2 in our 3-part series where I share actionable steps that music educators and leaders in the musician world can take to help their musicians prevent injury and overcome injury and everything in between. And make sure you stick around until the end because I'm sharing so much information and I don't want you to miss anything. Last week we talked about the 3 C's of injury prevention for music leaders: culture, curate, and coach. And this is such an important topic as the research has shown that the relationships with fellow musicians, conductors, or private instructors play a huge role in the success of overcoming the injury and recovery in general. Furthermore, in another research and development episode this season, we will talk about how poor coach and athlete relationships can lead to more significant overuse injuries. And you might be thinking, why are we talking about athletes on a musician podcast? You'll find out in that episode. And to open this part of the discussion up, I'm going to share a part of my own injury story. I will never forget the day that I decided that I needed to drop my ensembles because my injury was becoming increasingly more severe. I had placed really well in all of my ensembles and it nearly broke me to have to back out of literally all of them. And as you could probably imagine, I had mixed reactions from my professors. And I want to preface this story by saying that I do not fault any of them or think of any of them as less because of how they reacted. That being said, one day in the hallway, before I had officially backed out of this particular ensemble, I approached one of the directors in the hallway and expressed really nervously and timidly the fact that I was experiencing some pain in my chops and might need to take some time to recover. And this person, who honestly may have been just having a bad morning, said automatically, well, are we going to have to find a different trumpet player, without any sort of empathy or any sort of emotional reaction. But to be completely transparent and honest with you, this nearly sent me into a panic attack. I literally had to leave that situation and just go in a corner and kind of have my moment. And again, I don't fault him or think down on him anymore for saying that. He was doing the best that he could with the knowledge and experience that he had at that time. However, this introduces the concept that I want to share with you today of what not to do when your musician approaches you with pain, an injury, movement disorder, or illness. And here it is. Don't be a sap. And yep, seeing as many of us content creators like to create our funny acronyms, I decided to create a few funny ones of my own. Hey, real quick, sorry to interrupt the episode, but if you are a musician who's going through an injury right now and you feel like you could use some extra help or some extra coping strategies to help you get through this really sucky, difficult experience, head to musicianunchained.com/let's hang to see if a coaching relationship would be right for you at this time in your recovery. Okay, enjoy the rest of the episode. So what does SAP, S-A-P, stand for? It stands for shame, assume, and project. And the first letter, shame, is one that I would be willing to bet that most of us, educators, leaders, whoever, don't do deliberately. In fact, most of the things I'm going to be talking about today, we don't do with the intent to cause harm to our musicians. Because personally, I operate under the philosophy that the vast majority of humanity is just trying to do the best that we can with what we have, just making it work, and that we don't have the ulterior motives of harming others. So cut yourself some slack if you're feeling shameful of yourself. But that being said, in each of these 3 things, there are certain ways that we may find ourselves employing language and actions that cause musicians to feel shame. Some common shame-building phrases are, how could you let this happen? You're letting us down by letting this happen. Why didn't you tell me about this sooner? That's a big one, actually. Why didn't you tell me about this sooner? Why didn't you stop when the pain hit? That's another big one. Again, you may not be realizing that you're doing this or that these phrases are shame-inducing, but they definitely can be. Maybe not all the time, but they definitely can be. Some other hidden shame-inducing things could include our body language as we listen to them. If we appear annoyed, frustrated, or otherwise not concerned with their well-being, an anxious student or musician with heightened senses is going to pick up on that body language and then add to it. Another one is our language to the rest of the ensemble, or our ability to maintain the degree of confidentiality that is needed to respect the dignity of the musician and their issues. And then lastly, avoid any words or actions that would belittle the musician, their musical or other capabilities, or damage their identity or self-esteem. That should be a no-brainer, but sometimes we don't see the things that causes those things in our behavior. And of course, I have to add the caveat that even while employing these countermeasures, you can't control how the musician will respond. But notice that all of these things I have listed are within your control. Anything outside of them is not your concern. Then the A is for assume. Now, you know what they say about people who assume, and if you don't, look it up. Trust me, you don't want to hear it from me. So moving on. Just kidding. The two biggest mistakes that I see educators especially make, but also other people in positions of leadership in the music industry like personnel managers, ensemble directors, whoever, is number one, assuming that the pain or injury is less severe than it is. Don't assume you understand what they are going through or even how to get them through it. And number two, assuming that you, their leader, is the only person that they can go to in order to find the answers they need for recovery, or that all of the solutions need to go through you as their leader and not the musician. That is probably the biggest one, and we'll talk about that in a second. But let's talk about number one now, assuming that it is less severe than it actually is. Now, there are cases where the pain or injury is really not that huge of a deal, and the musician will be back to playing in a week or so. I will say that this often happens when the musician already has an open dialogue with the professional, and they are able to catch it before it becomes a long-term issue. Furthermore, if this is a pattern of pain, that may be another indicator that something more serious needs to be addressed. And I understand that there may be good intentions behind the desire to downplay the pain. You may not want to freak the musician out. You may want them to maintain the relationship that you have with them, and in doing that, avoid delivering an uncomfortable truth. And I get it, it's a tough combo to have, but I can tell you from personal experience that while it is tough, if it is given with compassion and accountability and directness, it will almost always be well received, and your relationship with that musician will deepen in some truly meaningful and beautiful ways. Again, if you haven't watched this last week's episode about culture, please pause this now and go watch it, because if you haven't developed a culture in which a musician feels comfortable approaching you about their playing issues, then it will be really difficult to have any sort of a productive conversation about this subject with them. Now, going to number two, and this is honestly the more sinister one of the two. This is where you, the professional, assume that you are their only source of recovery. And please excuse me while I singe your eyebrows a little bit here. Please write this down. You are not the only resource your musician needs or has in order to heal. I can't tell you the amount of conversations I've had with band directors who have a student with a studio professor that will not allow them to take lessons from other pedagogues or practitioners to help them get through their injury when they don't have that resource themselves. Or those who discourage musicians from going to any other practitioners of any kind because they are afraid they'll lose their business. Might I remind you, as I said in the last episode, that these are people, not products. You are merely a guide on the side, like I said in the last episode. The moment you start exercising dominion over the musician in any way that impedes their recovery, you have crossed a line, and you need to start making some changes. I know that the percentage of people that this applies to is small-ish, but it is big enough that I need to make sure I brought it up. Your job as a guide, as a professional in that musician's corner, is to help them find all the resources that they need to overcome their injury. That means medical professionals, pedagogues on your instrument that have those needed resources and capabilities, mental professionals, and we're talking coaches, therapists, etc. I hope that this serves as a warning to you, yes, but also as a message of comfort to you that it's not all on your shoulders to be the only one to help this person through this injury. Rely on your growing professional network, and your musician will feel so supported, which from a psychological standpoint is critical to their recovery. Hey, sorry to interrupt the episode yet again, but I wanted to tell you that if you are also a music educator of any kind and you feel like this is a conversation that needs to be had for your program, please reach out to me at clark@musicianunchained.com, and we can talk about how we can collaborate together to bring these topics, to bring these strategies to your program to help your students stay as healthy and as happy as they can while pursuing their passion. Keep on keeping on and continue watching the episode. Then lastly, we have project. This is the one that I feel like that wonderful person from my story inadvertently used in my interaction with him. I understand that you have your own pressures as a director, personnel manager, studio professor, whoever, to perform well in your job. I get that. And those outcomes are directly impacted by how the musicians in your ensemble and in your charge, how they perform. I get that. Understood. But allow me to apply to your humanity once again by saying that these are people, not products. The music is the product, obviously. But if you aren't treating the musicians the way that they need to be treated, then the product suffers. There are many ways that our language can project this pressure onto our musicians, saying, what are we going to do without you? Or, we are really counting on you to get back as quickly as humanly possible. Or saying that cliche, the show must go on. And I've had people on my show that have had to cancel tours to save their long-term career. Imagine how hard that is. What this does is it projects the pressure you feel from your department head or from the public onto the musician. That's the weight that's now on their shoulders when you say that. But honestly, the public will get over it, but you may be doing lasting damage to them and their psyche if you project the pressure you feel onto them. When you put an artificial timeline on their recovery, you could end up prolonging their whole recovery timeline. And what I mean by artificial timeline is, I mean anything that sets a timeline or a deadline on their recovery that is not their body, because their body is ultimately the one that is in charge of when they get fully recovered. I'm reminded by a story that Professor Shay Owens from BYU shared in our season 2 of the podcast. He's a world-renowned operatic baritone, and I just love that he was on the show. He fell ill and was not able to sing at all, and the tour that he was on had to be canceled. That was incredibly difficult for him, obviously, and for everyone involved, even the audience, even the public. But I shuddered to think what may have happened if they had tried to force him to sing, simply because, quote unquote, the show must go on. Sometimes it is possible to go on. I'm not saying that it isn't. But that decision should be made in a calculative manner with the help of medical and psychological professionals, and not rashly because of any sort of external pressure that you or the musician may be feeling. Again, you may be fearful of retribution from your colleagues, your bosses, the public, or even the musician at times. But the health of the musician has to be paramount. I can't think of a more antithetical answer to the dilemma of, quote unquote, the show must go on than forcing a musician who can't perform healthily to do so. The musical product will obviously suffer, and the musician will suffer even more so because of it. It is better to allow the musician to heal and then move forward and adapt. Okay, last interruption, I promise you. Before we get to the rest of the episode, I just wanted to let you know that if you're a musician going through an injury and you need a community to help you get through it, if you need a sense of support, some people you can ask questions to, just gain a pick-me-up whenever you need it, the Musician Unchained support group, formerly known as the Trust the Process Podcast Injured Musician Support Group on Facebook. The link is in the description below for you to join. You don't have to go through this alone. Keep on keeping on and enjoy the rest of the episode. So those are my thoughts about a framework that can help you as educators, as personnel managers, whatever your responsibility is, to take better care of the musicians in your charge. Of course, there are exceptions to these rules. I'm not even calling them rules. I'm just calling it a guideline or a framework that you can use to help your musicians to transition from like what they were used to in healthy performing and then into the recovery stage. Of course, there will be times when it really is just a simple thing that can be worked through without taking all these drastic measures. I don't want you to feel like I'm giving you a dogmatic ideology, because I'm not. There is nuance in all of this. This needs to be less of the exception and more of the general practice, because we have musicians who are just pushing through pain when they can't and should not be doing so, because they think that what you need from them is more important than what their body needs from them. And that, again, is antithetical to us creating the best musical product. It's just that simple. So I hope this has been helpful to you. Share this with another music educator or music leader in your life. And let me know what you think. Disagree with me. Love to hear from you. Do all those podcasty things like share, like, subscribe, send me an email, join our newsletter, definitely, because you'll get sneak peeks to episodes and all sorts of goodies. And keep on keeping on. We'll see you next time. Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode of Trust the Process, the official podcast of Musician Unchained, the newest coaching program dedicated to helping musicians navigate and overcome injury. Before you go, I have a few quick ways you can stay connected and support our growing community. found value in today's episode, consider making a donation to support our mission of empowering musicians worldwide. Every contribution helps us create more content and resources for you. So visit link number 2 below to support the mission. If you decide to donate, I'll send you my newest resource, the Injured Musician Toolkit, which is an ebook designed to give you tools to help you get through your injury. Subscribe to our newsletter to get exclusive insights, tips, sneak previews of episodes, and announcements straight to your inbox. Act now and I will send you a free gift. So sign up at www.musicianunchained.com/newsletter. And if you or someone you know would like to go deeper with me in the topics of injury and mindset, head over back to musicianunchained.com and check out the Let's Hang tab. As always, I want to thank Daniel Baldwin, my audio engineer, and my sister Dana Lovell for her help with the promotional materials. There is no podcast without them. Before I go, I want to tell you how much I deeply appreciate your time and support. You are not alone on this journey. There are musicians and educators out there who need this resource, and we need to get it to them. Together, we are breaking the chain of old habits and thought patterns that don't serve us anymore, and unchaining the potential within ourselves to face each challenge with strength and resilience. So, as I always say, keep on keeping on, and keep trusting the process. Until next time.